Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
And welcome to our first episode in October. I am back at the hosting chair, and my first guest is a return guest. If you missed her on Women in Tabletop Gaming Month, her day was on June 20th, and I'm so happy to have her back. I have Kristine Chester of Heroes of the Hydian Way Podcast, who also occasionally guests on Tales from the Hydian Way Podcast. And I am so happy to have you back, Kristine. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, David. It's wonderful to be here again.
It is. When I was going through the list of people for this, like the last kind of month of recording where because I bulk record a lot of my episodes just because it's a lot easier on me and the family and editing and everything. And I was looking at a lot of my guests from Women in Tabletop Gaming Month, and you and I had a conversation that extended way past what we had recorded for a good portion of time, along with getting to know you on Twitter after the fact and everything that you're into. And I was like, I have to have you back as a full guest to just dive into just so much more.
Aw. Yeah, we went on for a while like that. What, you were trying to keep those interviews to like half an hour, and we talked for probably closer to 2.
Yeah, I think we talked closer to 2. And just so everybody knows that's listening, it was not about like fandom stuff. It's all about like podcast editing and recording and a lot of the technical stuff. So it wasn't anything that you guys missed out on listening to.
Yeah, I actually tried out Reaper at your recommendation. It did not work for me, sadly, but it was still a good experiment.
Oh my gosh, the one thing that I had wanted to do during the downtime is kind of try out different editing kits.
Mhm.
And I tried Reaper, and it was not meant for me. I know that a lot of people swear by it, but it's got like that steep learning curve, and me and steep learning curves sometimes just do not go together.
Me either. I opened it up, and for me, I need to at least start making progress. And I hit a wall very quickly with that, where I couldn't figure out how to even see what I was doing. Like I think I put an analogy on Twitter, and I think it was something like it's like the difference between driving an automatic car and driving a like 747 with the windows blacked out and the controls are all written in gibberish. That's how I felt. So that did not work for me. I've actually been using the like free version of Audition and learning that. So I've been alternating between that and Audacity right now, since Audacity is what I know and Audition is what I'm expanding my skill sets into. And I find that much more friendly to get started.
Oh yeah, I've got my main is Audacity, and I'm again sorry for boring everybody, but this is going to be in the episode. My main's Audacity
content.
My main's Audacity because that's what I had already knew how to use basically, and I've been using a program called Hindenburg, which is what I use to assemble the episode, like put my intro in and put the episode in and put outro and music and whatever else I tend to do. And I've heard that it's really good, but the full like actual like powerful version is like $300, and I'm not ready to drop that kind of money on anything at this point.
Yeah, that's intense. I went ahead and just made a note to myself though to check it out, so we'll see.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's a free trial, and I picked mine up on a sale for like I think $5 or $10 for the version that I have, and it like auto levels and some stuff like real basic stuff, and I've been learning how to edit and take stuff out, but it's definitely, you get that first thing that you learn on, and you almost stick to it even if it's not the greatest, but you know how to do it. Like I know how to edit in like an hour, and I can't beat that.
You go so much faster when you know the audio software. Or the other problem I run into now doing the AP podcast, an actual play podcast, is I like to make use of filters and sound effects and things like that. And I've already run into the problem of I do a fairly elaborate set of filters for my Cav voice. That's the Cav is the Gand technician character I play on Heroes of the Hydian Way. And that involves like duplicating a track, and I have one track that's in a higher pitch and one that's a lower, and then one of those two also has the like my droid filter. So it sounds really cool, and I like it a lot, but I don't know how to replicate that in Audition yet. Can do it
gosh.
immediately in Audacity, but it's what you know.
Exactly. And you know a lot of things, and you're into a lot of fandoms. And what I love is when I send my questionnaire and people just go hog wild on it, and they're like, well, let me tell you how much I love everything that I love. And when I get those emails back, I'm like, well, dang, you're making it really tough because you've got like a bajillion things that you'd love to talk about, and I only have time for a few. So
I am what you would call thorough.
But I tend to like try to get some stuff, old stuff and new stuff, and some stuff that maybe I don't know about. And we're definitely going to cover the breadth and width of that for the fandoms that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to jump in with a fandom that just celebrated its 52nd anniversary, which is amazing. And that is the Star Trek fandom.
Yes.
My first question is, how did you get into Star Trek?
Okay. Before all the other like trekkers out there start to replicate and throw tomatoes my way, I'm gonna say I got into Trek in a weird way, and I acknowledge this, and I acknowledge that my opinion is probably wrong in this whole thing. I got started with Enterprise, with the fifth Star Trek series that came out, the one with like starring Scott Bakula, where it started airing in 2001, because that's when we got UPN, and I had heard a great deal about this Star Trek thing, but didn't have any experience with it. So I started there, really liked it, and then in college, a good friend of mine, Brandon Perdue, who is also now a player on Heroes, he loaned me the Star Trek: The Next Generation box sets, and I devoured that, because then I went from, oh, Enterprise is like okay to subpar Trek, and then watching TNG after the first season, it's amazing. So I watched all of that and all of Deep Space Nine, and went on to watch all of Voyager and the original series. So I've seen everything and all the movies, everything except for the old animated series, which I do mean to remedy, just that way I can say I have seen it all. So I actually got into Trek fairly late, like high school for Enterprise, college for the rest.
That is, I think that might be the first time I've ever heard someone get into Trek through Enterprise. But given the time period, as far as like when you got like UPN and when you got even just checking Star Trek out, I mean that's akin to somebody saying they got into Star Wars with like Star Wars: The Force Awakens, because that was like the first movie that maybe they had access to, which we'll get to that fandom in a minute, or in a few minutes. But yeah, like I got into Trek in Next Generation, but only because I had a friend that said, hey, let's go to the movies. And we watched Star Trek 6, Undiscovered Country, in the movie theater. And he's like, oh, if you like this, there's a TV show on right now, Next Generation. And I was like, oh, really? So yeah, like, and not only that, you have watched all of Enterprise, and I sadly gave up on Enterprise. I think after the first season, I was pretty much done with it, and I've never gone back to watch it.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's like situation, and just I didn't know better. So I gleefully watched all of it while it aired, and there were stumbles. There were points where I went, mostly during like season 3, where I don't know if I want to continue this. But I did, and for me, Enterprise still holds like a special place for me, because it is how I entered it. Which is to say, I own the only other Trek series I rank it above is Voyager. Even while fully acknowledging that Enterprise just like repeated a lot of Voyager episodes and didn't do them as well. I don't know. It's I came into it so weird.
Yeah, and you know what? You have like you like everyone has that memory of like their first whatever they got into the fandom. Like if people got into the I know I recorded with somebody their first Star Wars movie was Phantom Menace, and that will always hold that special place in their heart for getting into that fandom. So that that's totally as long as you get into it, I'm happy with people being in the fandom.
This reminds me, I'm trying to remember what they're called now, but so my very first episode of Star Trek was Silent Enemy. So I didn't even start at the beginning Enterprise. I started like partway through. And so like that episode sticks out of my mind. And just in like the last month, my girlfriend Nicole and I were playing Star Trek Online. And we were doing like the Romulan missions, and they brought up that species that is in that one episode of Enterprise, and I like lost it. Like she has no idea what's going on. I'm just flipping out when I make the connection. I'm so excited, and she's like, "Oh, them? Okay." But it mattered a lot to me, and I can't remember what they called them now, which is gonna bug me. Uh I'm not sure to find it now. Oh, the Alachi is what they named them in Star Trek Online. So it made me happy anyway.
Well, see, and those are the good things that even so for me, if I was playing, I'd be like, okay, cool. But like there's the people that have that kind of connection with that show, and for for you and for others, it's definitely like a nice Easter egg to even see like Enterprise being acknowledged at some point.
Yes. So now I'm curious about two things.
Okay, go ahead.
First is, have you watched Discovery?
Oh, see, now you're gonna make me sad, because I have the Discovery episodes on my computer and I have not watched them. However, I will preface this by saying, because we're recording in September, the kids were home all summer, and therefore I cannot. When I work from home, I generally watch TV and I work, because I have the kind of job that lets me be able to do that. But when during the summer for the 2.5 months, I couldn't do that. So I'm behind on at least like 10 different series of stuff going on. And I was binging a different series for an upcoming episode in December. And I just finished that 4 seasons off last weekend. So I'm slowly catching up, but Discovery was on my radar. But I went on the rant on another episode about how I felt CBS was doing a disservice by putting it behind a paywall online instead of putting it on primetime programming where Star Trek should be and rightfully has a place to be. And then I heard mixed reactions, but I've heard maybe it'll get better, and I know that season 2 is coming, so yay.
Yeah. I intend to check it out if it's made available to me. I did not pay CBS any money. I made use of the free trial to watch it, and you know what? For the free price and having to put up with some ads, I enjoyed it. I think it has more promise in the character department than, say, Enterprise or Voyager did. But in terms of the overall plot and some of the weirdness, like how they changed the Klingons, I don't know. I was very torn when it was released, but I still overall I had a good time with it. Enough so that I'm willing to see what they do in the second season. I also have in the back of my head the fact that no Trek series has ever had a good first season.
Right.
There's that golden rule, so maybe next season's going to be better. We're going to get Spock, and I think it is it Pike or April who's captaining the Discovery?
I do not know. Because again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know who's captain.
Lose my Star Trek cred. It is Robert April, not Christopher Pike. See, that's a rookie mistake on my part, because April was the first captain of the NCC 1701 Enterprise. As I put on my nerd glasses here.
Now, you had another question, perhaps?
Oh, my other one was, since I know you also play tabletop RPGs, have you checked out Star Trek Adventures at all?
Let me tell you something, and I'm gonna have to edit my like crazy ticks out or something. I have wanted to play it ever since I saw the Borg cube of epicness online. Two downsides was I think it's is it Modifius that publishes it?
Yes.
That was the first hurdle of problems, is because the shipping costs are super crazy getting it.
Yes.
And then for me, I don't have the time to play a lot of tabletop games just with work schedule and the kids and the family and everything. So I have not played it, but I really want to like at least try it out once or twice just to see how it plays.
I recommend it. I own just like the PDF rules. Nicole actually went hog wild and bought not the giant Borg cube, but like the more reasonably priced Borg cube. So, which then she likes to show off all the PDF copies of all the expansion books that she gets that I don't, because of that investment. But we both play in a Star Trek Adventures game, actually run by Brandon, who I've already brought up, and it's a lot of fun. It's very different, but they do a great job of capturing that Star Trek feel. Like we've only had 2 fights, and we've been playing since like April. It's a lot more, a lot more kind of like mystery based, or there's this problem or social based, different situations of that sort that come up, and a lot more like narrative gets crammed in there. And we're now starting to enter doing adventures that are atypical. Like we had one session where Nicole, who plays our captain, got split into 2, much like I'm blanking on the TOS episode now. Oh, it is the Enemy Within. Very much in that manner, and so she had to play 2 versions of her character, and it was a lot of fun. Like it really worked well for even that alternative sort of storytelling, and having the characters kind of pitted against each other a bit.
That's awesome. How does it play as far as like just mechanics go? I mean, you have a captain, so are you like constantly following orders, or is it like missions? Like, just how does the general flow of the game work?
So like any RPG that involves like a military system, we're no more bound to like Nicole's captain's rules than we are in other RPGs. Like, she still gives orders and things occur, but she's not like, the like Lord and Master of the ship or anything. And the rest of us are playing like the senior staff of that starship, so we still have ranks ourselves, and we're still important people aboard and have a say and things like that. In terms of the general flow, the way it usually goes is Brandon will give the orders first to Nicole, and then she'll decide kind of what to like relay or who or what we're gonna do. We kind of go from there. The actual flow of the campaign, it is a D20 based game, but your goal is to roll under numbers, because you have like a skill and like a characteristic kind of thing, and you combine the two, and then you're just trying to roll underneath that, and then you're counting up like if you succeed, like let's say you have your characteristic plus your skill gives you like a 17 and something, then you just need to roll a 17 or less, and that's a success.
Oh, that's cool.
And you count those up, and if you get extra successes, you gain what's called momentum, which is kind of like a plot point or destiny point kind of thing that carries over and can be used on future rolls or spent in the moment to like gather more information or things like that. And then the GM has a threat pool that kind of functions like, the other side for making narrative changes.
Oh, very cool. I had not heard about how it played, but
Mhm.
I've heard, good things about it online, which is why I'd gotten interested in it even to begin with. And it's like, ooh, because I think one of the things is, at least for tabletop gaming, like Star Trek hasn't really had good experiences on the tabletop gaming side. I've seen Star Trek role playing games before, but they've never either caught my attention or grabbed me the way that this newest one has.
I like this one a lot better than the Decipher one, which is the other one I've played. Well, for one thing, how you make a character is brilliant. You actually do a life path for them. So you begin with them and you select their species and that gives you certain things. And then you figure out things like where were you raised? Okay, how did that affect you? And that'll give you certain stats. Okay, who are your parents? How were, did you accept the upbringing they gave you or did you rebel against it? And that can change your character in certain ways. And then you go to the academy and you pick your track and that gets you things. And then you have like career events that happen where I'm a big proponent of randomly rolling them.
Hmm.
And that's how you might wind up with, say, like myself having a Klingon exchange officer doctor who negotiated a treaty. And I had to figure out, okay, what happened there? And that completely changed that character. Because okay, if I'm a Klingon who negotiated a treaty, clearly I have some issues with my people.
That is really neat. That's something it's on the list of if ever I get a chance, if ever I get a chance to like try something out or join a game, especially like online, it's just got to work with the schedule.
We just need to like rope you into like a series of one shots, like the like next International Podcasting Month or something, and just like run a game or two for you. Just let you try out some new things.
There you go. There's and I know I've talked about it with a lot of people, but the world that we live in now, as far as role playing games go, is just so expansive. Like when I started gaming, it was D&D, Vampire or the White Wolf stuff that was coming out. Rifts was really popular, Star Wars, and that was really about it. And like those were like the four-ish main stuff. And then as you got more into like, especially once Wizards of the Coast picked up D&D and they made it open source with like D20, you get like all the D20 stuff that's out there. But even then, it's still D20, and you're just not really expanding. But now, like from the changes of when I got into it in like 97 to 21 years later, it's like there's so many great games and systems out there, and I just want to like play all of them.
There isn't enough time, David. There just isn't. Like that's been my experience where I'm happy I get to try out a new game or two a year, and there's still so many that are going by me.
Yeah, I had the same thing where it's like, I can buy the PDF all I want, and I may even get to read that PDF, but the likelihood of me finding three or four people to play that specific game, just the amount of possibility just diminishes as I keep getting, it's like, okay, well, I like this, but how am I going to find like three or four people to get interested in it? Which God bless Twitter and the tabletop role playing game community for if I put a game out there, if I said, okay, let's run this game, I can guarantee that I would have at least three people that would want to play it at this point.
Oh, no doubt at all.
But yeah, so back to I was about to say Star Wars. Back to Star Trek. Out of curiosity, because you've mentioned it a few times, so I want to go on the flip side. Like, which Trek series is your favorite?
Deep Space Nine.
Yes,
It's the correct answer. Like I know people have different opinions, but for me, I am really big on characters when it comes to my storytelling. And the cast of DS9 is so good. Like that's the one cast in Trek where I can look at all the characters and I have a reason to love every single one of them, including many of the guest characters, like good old Garrick. And the serial storytelling it does, especially as like the series goes on and they get into heavier topics, is so good. I love it so much.
Me too. It is, and I get a lot of flack because my best friend, he loves Babylon 5. Like that's his show until he dies. It will be like the greatest show that he's ever watched forever.
Mhm.
And Babylon 5 and Deep Space 9 came out at the same time, and there's a lot of like fighting at that time or arguing about like, oh, Deep Space 9 ripped off Babylon 5, and oh, Babylon 5 Deep Space Nine, that type of thing. And you watch the shows, and they're on a space station. They have like a few overlapping like possible similarities, but they're two totally different shows. I love Deep Space Nine. I love that they took characters like my favorite, Miles O'Brien, where you have seen him, especially if you had watched Next Generation for the like I believe it's like 4 or 5 seasons before Deep Space Nine started, where you're getting to know his character. You get those little moments with him. You get to see his wife. You get to see Worf deliver his child with his wife Keiko, and it's like you get to know him, and then he gets to have like this main role on Deep Space Nine where he just gets to blossom and grow, and it's like I love that. And I loved Cisco being part of the Wolf 359 like Borg attack, and it's like
Mhm.
that's awesome. And just all of these characters just work so well. And then you have characters like you're watching Next Generation, you get these biases towards characters, and then you get characters where it's like eventually they redeem themselves, like Rom and Nog and Quark, and you
Mhm.
get to see like the whole side of the Ferengi, and you get to see the Federation in a completely different light with like diplomacy and how they do warfare, and it's just all of that mixed with like the Bajoran politics and religion, and it is just so good. Like I cannot say enough about it.
I'm just sitting over here nodding along as you're talking, because I agree with absolutely all those points. One more thing I'll add on the character front is I love that in that series, unlike every other Trek, we see Starfleet officers with families, with kids, or they fall in love or get married as like things go on. I love that like the characters feel well-rounded. They feel like they're complete in a way. Even little things like I love the relationship of the friendship between O'Brien and Bashir.
Oh my gosh,
Like
yes.
it is so well portrayed, and it was a happy accident on the writer's part. And I can't imagine that show without that dynamic as they go along. But just all these characters, they feel like people. They feel like people you want to go hang out with.
hmm And you're talking about the characters, and I love that with the Dax symbiote, like you have that relationship with Dax symbiote and Cisco, and then you have the relationship that Jadzia has with Cisco, and then you have the relationship Jadzia has with like Worf,
Mhm.
and then the eventual transition of the Dax symbiote into the next host. And it's like things like that where it's like you can like they had the ability to go back in time to like show these things about Cisco, even if they weren't like actually flashing back. They could make that reference or make that comment and be like, oh yeah, like I knew you back during those time period,
Mhm.
like that. So good.
Yeah. That just makes me think of the meme that goes around Twitter about like respecting people's pronouns with like Jadzia meeting with, I think it's Kor. It's Kor or Koloth. It's one of the like the old Klingons who's like, Curzon, my old friend. It's Jadzia now. Jadzia, my old friend.
Yep.
um oh, it's good.
Now, I'm going to ask, and you can pass on it if you want to, but do you have a favorite character?
That's a harder question to answer. Um From Deep Space Nine specifically, or all of Trek?
Anything that you want to give me as far as Trek.
Anything I want to give you. Oh, you're asking me to pick between like my babies. I love them.
I know.
Love them all.
I know.
Probably, honestly, like if we're looking at Deep Space Nine being my favorite Trek, probably my favorite character in there is Bashir, and I actually love that character's evolution. Is a big part of it because he begins in that first episode in the pilot, so like baby faced and just eager and excited, like, I'm here to do real frontier medicine, and so naive, but also he's such like a he starts off as the heart for that show, like, he's the one who is just gleeful at every situation. But as the series goes on, he starts off like in his like mid-20s, and we follow him going into his 30s, and he mellows and he hardens a bit in different ways, and he smiles a little less as time goes on and gets more serious, and other things come up, like the spoilers for a really old show, like the genetic engineering. And I love all these different layers they add as they go, and the fact that that character did grow up and did change based on his experiences, and based on the relationships he had with the other characters, and especially as a doctor going into to situations like the Dominion War. I feel like he has some just really, really strong episodes dealing with kind of his own moral compass and what's right and what's wrong. Where do we draw the line as as one nation fighting another one versus the like federations offering humanitarian aid at situations. It's
Mhm.
Yeah, so I like him a lot. Also, I really, really like that friendship with O'Brien.
Oh my goodness, yes. And you cannot ignore the amazing Hollow Suite adventures that Dr. Bashir gets to go on.
Yes, I still really the like 007 program was the Our Man Bashir. It's just a great
Yes.
episode, and everybody had so much fun with that. You can just tell. Especially my favorite is Avery Brooks, as Cisco, getting to play what is it, Dr. Noah?
I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've seen the series.
But he plays as a fantastic like Bond villain. Like his full like
Mhm.
quirkiness comes out and he just owns it.
Yes, it was so good. And then, getting to go from like having, we had like this the space station stuff, but then you get to go off world, and then you have like these amazing things with like the Klingons, showing up and trying to obliterate them. I think that's it's one of the favorite things. I remember watching it on TV when it was airing, when the Klingons are like, "Oh yeah, we're going to come attack the station."
Way of
And
the
they're
Warrior.
Yeah, and they are like, "Oh, well, we've been planning for something else, but we've got all of this armament now."
That was a beautiful like contrast from the first episode where they had nothing. They had like 10 photon torpedoes and had to bluff their way out of a situation. And by that was the season 4 premiere. They were armed to the teeth. They were ready for the for the Dominion, but worked fine on the Klingons. And then while
Yep.
we're talking about them, I also really like Deep Space Nine because it gave Worf his due. Like for so much of TNG, it's just Worf being thrown into one wall after another, just getting his butt handed to him. And he has some good episodes in there, but nothing like he has in Deep Space Nine, where he starts struggling with command and with with love and with the with the war and his own perception of honor, and again
Hmm.
diving deeper into like the Klingon house politics, and it's so good.
It is. It's nice to get those character moments and the character arcs, and it's you said it with Bashir and how you got to watch him. Like, you get to see all of these characters grow in ways that you don't even expect by the end of the series, especially. And I have to point it out because it's one, like, they're some of my favorite side characters is Ram and Nog, and their evolution from like the Stoogie and his son that live on the station to like these full on characters where you're totally invested in them.
Yeah, like Rom starts off as all he wants to do is kill his brother and inherit the bar. And they still like touch on that a little bit, like tongue in cheek later on. But somewhere along the way, he becomes that just beautiful doofus who you just love him. And I like Nog's evolution from troublemaker into Starfleet officer is incredible and believable. And he's still like he's the lead of one of my favorite episodes. Is it Only a Paper Moon? The one where it's dealing with his like PTSD.
I again, long time. It's one of the things I try not to do is name episodes because usually I will get them wrong.
Sorry, it's the name of the episode is It's Only a Paper Moon. So I was one word off. Can you tell I like Star Trek?
No, I can't tell at all.
Yeah.
At all. Nothing. No, you don't like Star Trek at all.
Yeah.
Now, I do have a quick question before we switch off is, you know, as you were talking about the Star Trek franchises, there's one that you kind of made mention of that a lot of people hold in a pretty high regard, and that's Star Trek Voyager. So I'd love to know what your take on it is and why it is.
I don't like Voyager. I just don't. It's hurt one by the fact that it was the one of the last ones I watched. I don't like the characters on the show. Like Janeway is acceptable. The Doctor is amazing. And I like Tuvok. I've learned to like Tuvok as time has gone on. And I don't like anybody else on that show. And I realize like that's probably just my own preferences when it comes to certain characters and certain traits and stuff. But it just feels too much like they're trying to be the edgy Trek. Let's have a Maquis first officer, and there's the whole thing with Paris and B'Elanna with the anger issues and stuff. Although she's all right, I guess, as time goes on. But and then plot wise, there's a lot of really weird episodes. Like there's some I really like throughout it, like Year of Hell and things like that are good storytelling. But there's a lot of garbage. Like I think that's the series with the like I think is it Janeway in Paris? It's like a couple characters turn into like lizards and go off and like weird alien subspace lizards and like mate or something. Like there's just strange things along the way. I don't like how they use the Borg. And I don't like getting away from the Klingons and Romulans and Cardassians and all of this lore that they had built up from the Alpha and Beta quadrants. In favor of like trying to do new species like the Kazon and stuff. It didn't ever feel right. So no, I don't care for that one, and I don't like 7 of 9 either. But I also I'm not a fan of that like cold emotionless girl stereotype that seems to pervade so much science fiction. So that's a pet peeve of mine on top of it.
Yeah, that was the thing. I remember when it premiered, because we didn't have UPN, like I had to go to someone's house that had a satellite dish to watch it. And it was a long time before I saw it, because in our small town that I lived in Florida, they would bump, it wouldn't be on a regular time. It'd be on like Friday night at 2:00 in the morning or Sunday at 10. They would bump it around the schedule based on whatever like needs that they had, because we didn't have the dedicated UPN channel. So I didn't watch it until probably it came out on DVD. Whenever it came out on DVD is when I started watching it. And I liked it, but it wasn't like the show where it was like that connection for me. And especially I don't like 7 of 9 at all. This just of all the characters on the show, it was like, no thank you to that one. It's not anything as far as like the actor or anything. I just didn't like the way that it transpired and everything else. And now you've got like this character that is pretty much a know-it-all, and like, okay, like, there's not that much struggle for knowing things at this point.
Yeah, she's also really abrasive, which I know is a character choice, but it also then makes her abrasive to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I feel bad that we're both kind of like looking down at Voyager, but I guess I want to say in its defense, like it's still Star Trek. I still watched every episode of it, so it's not like I absolutely hated it. It's just my least favorite Trek.
Yeah, and everyone has their least favorite Trek. Like I could say Enterprise is my least favorite Trek, but that's also going off the fact that I've only seen one season of it, and I don't know if I could say the same thing about the original series. But the original series, I think if I was trying to watch it now, I would struggle with that series too, like just trying to get through
You would
it.
be surprised. I watched it much later, and the first 2 seasons of it are really good. It's just the third season because there's only 3 for the original series.
Yeah,
Like the magic number of 7 for most of the other treks, except for Enterprise. 3 is a terrible, terrible season, and you know it. You know when you get to it right away because of the Spock's brain episode. But the first 2 actually do hold up. Like there's still issues. There's still it is hampered by the time period that it came out in.
mm-hmm.
But it's still good storytelling, and it's surprisingly progressive in some areas.
I will. I think like now that I'm. Well, no, I can't say now that because I've got a lot of shows to
You have
watch.
so
And
many
there's no way. There's no way. You know, seven seasons of like multiple series just add up as far as episodes go, and it's like, yeah, I can't really promise of rewatching certain things, but
No.
I need to make my way back to Trek at some point.
At some point, we just need to like build you a TARDIS or something and let you go watch it. Have the time to go watch all these things.
Yes,
Maybe when your kids are all grown up.
that may be. We will have to see on that one. I've still got a few years to go with all of them.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now, flipping from one star item to another star item is you're also into Star Wars.
Yes, and I know most people might think. I guess actually this is probably an older thought that's dead now. The idea of like Trek versus Wars. I,
Trek Wars.
I think most people are kind of like, if they're a nerd, if they're into one of them, they probably are at least familiar with the other one if they're not into it as well. So
Mhm.
I think I'm good in that regard because I don't want to choose between those two. I love them both.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's the thing where it's like, you know, they're two totally different entities. There's no way you can like you can't even compare them. It's like what are you talking about? But so again, how did you get into the Star Wars fandom?
So Star Wars, I got into a long time ago, and a state not that far away from here. I was shown the original Star Wars: A New Hope on VHS, recorded from like television, you know, with the like commercials and everything.
Yes.
By my parents. I was pretty young. Like I was probably like 5 or 6. Like I was pretty young. Like I remember we had A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back recorded on VHS, and they showed those to me, and I was just entranced. And I started to watch them again and again. I wore out those tapes because I remember it was a big event when the day came around where Return of the Jedi was going to air on TV, and we were able to record that, and I got to see how the original trilogy ended for the first time. And I was probably like 8 by that point. Like it was a couple years after the fact. And so I was really into Star Wars, and I remember when the special edition came out, my parents bought me the like VHS box set of that. So then I got to watch Star Wars without the commercials. And we're out those tapes. And then in middle school, a buddy of mine was starting to read the Rogue Squadron books from the old like Legends Star Wars novels. And this was still like we were in like 6th grade, or maybe it wasn't even middle school. Like we might have still been in elementary. Like this was a book above our reading level. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
no doubt about it, because I remember it was a challenge to see like who could get to the end of this first. And he kicked my butt for the beginning of it, but he kind of slowed down the further into the series, and I started to speed up as I got more into the reading and learning how to read an adult novel, and devoured that whole series, and then proceeded to read all of Legends, and I mean all of it, for a time, up through the whole New Jedi Order Yuzhan Vong business.
Yes.
So I was a big Star Wars nerd, to the point that the very first RPG I ever GM'd was the D20 Star Wars RPG. So not
Yep.
Saga even. This was the first one they put out.
I will have to say that I'm looking at my role playing books, which we unpacked this past weekend, and I have my West End Games D6 Star Wars, which is my first role playing game that I ever purchased, and next to it is the book that you were talking about from Wizards of the Coast, when they got the license to do D20 Star Wars, and then I have the revised edition right next to that, and then Saga edition right next to that one. But yes to everything, especially the love for Rogue Squadron, because that is perhaps one of my favorite book series of Star Wars ever. Like ever.
Well, Stackpole and Alston did an amazing job portraying the rogues, and then the Wraith Squadron bunch. Like they got really into it. Like I then later on, I played the X-Wing games and things like that. And they did a good job of like incorporating like enough of those elements mixed in with like real world like piloting, like actual information, and then just a healthy dose of like Star Wars lore and nerdery. Like for Heroes, I'm currently playing a Lungless Gand. Well, the only other one I know of from all of Star Wars is Oril from Rogue Squadron, was Corrin's wingman. Yeah, I wanted to call it a wingmate, but I guess that's not actually gender neutral in terms of terms yet. Just like the characters were so good. Even if Corrin could be a bit of a Mary Sue at times, the writing is solid. These situations are interesting, and it does a good job of also like playing up the war aspects. Like both squads lose a lot of members as time goes on. Like it's not they're not invincible going forward. They were very, very good. I still haven't read they came out with Mercy Kill, the last like Race Squadron book.
Okay.
I have that in a box somewhere. So I'd started it, but I had stopped reading Star Wars novels by that point. But it's still on my list to get back to. That way I can say I've read them all.
Yeah, I stopped reading Star Wars novels at the end of the New Jedi Order series. Like I read them as they released them, and we were playing a Star Wars campaign at the same time as they were releasing them. So the storyteller's running it, and he's got like what's going on with the Vong, and like the game wrapped, and we had to figure out like how to basically beat the Vong in some way. And then that like those last couple books came out, and everything that we had played was somehow incorporated in the books. Like we had, and it's like, are you kidding me? Like the way that our Jedi solved the problem was the exact same way, like that thing, like how to like do the stuff in the Force with the Vong was. Like what? Like it was insane.
You had a better ending for your Vong campaign than mine was. I can say mine was not incorporated, because that was the very first or maybe the second. It was one of the early Star Wars games I ran. I remember countering one of the flaws with that system, where like final boss of the campaign, and one of my players, to his great delight, still to this day, got a critical hit on the first attack, and they have this split between vitality and wounds.
Yep.
And a critical hit goes straight for wounds, and he did enough damage to one shot my campaign boss.
Yep. Yeah. That's how my Star Wars character died, because we played a campaign that lasted, I think, about 2 years running straight, like every week. And about halfway through, my Sullustan pilot, we had been ambushed, and we were trying to basically escape. So we're trying to get to the ship, and my Sullustan pilot guy, like, I'm critting left and right, like, because I think I had like a gun that's either like 1920 to crit. I'm not positive, but I'm fairly certain.
Mhm.
So I was critting like on every hit, like for like repeatedly, and then finally this this shot just came in and just killed my character. I was like, are you kidding me? Because it's like, you don't have, you got to stat your character out the right way sometimes, and you just don't have those wounds to
No.
cover your butt on that one.
No, that game could be very harsh. The last time I ran it was in college. I ran a year-long campaign of it. And actually Brandon was a part of that. And I still remember to this day, he was trying to, like, there was a moment where he was pulling like a Han Solo, like hiding in like some smuggling compartments.
Mhm.
So stormtroopers came on board, split up, searching the ship, and a like level 1 stormtrooper like minion, natural 20, found the compartment, opened it up. They got into a fight. Brandon missed. Stormtrooper shoots him. Natural 20, deals a bunch of wounds, and he surrendered to the level 1, even though he was like level 9 at the time. And it's like, okay, that's insane.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's like the one system where you play, and yeah, you can be all the level you want to be, but if that crit comes in, it is, you're almost done for with, if the dice roll the way that they roll.
Yeah, this is some of why I like the FFG system better. Like, I wouldn't go back to the D20 days. I might go back to
No.
Saga Edition for the right campaign and right like group, but the like D20 or D20 revised had so many flaws.
Mhm.
But still, that's what I cut my teeth on GMing wise. So
Yep. That was one of my first ones. It was Star Wars and Vampire were like the two that I kind of ran at this, like, started at the same time, but I was taking over for the GMs that just kind of needed a break for a little bit. So I'd take it over for a little bit and then give it back
Mhm.
and be like, okay, you've had your break, and I like playing too. So, oh man. So I have to ask, of course, do you have a favorite Star Wars movie? What are your opinions on the prequels and I guess the sequels to the series? Like, where are you? What are your favorites, or what are your general thoughts on it?
Okay. For a lot more detail in this regard, see Tales from the Hydian Way, where especially for the sequel movies, every time one comes out, we like record a like panel discussion about it.
Okay.
So my like original series thoughts, I don't think are that unusual. Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie. This is fact. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons why, because you probably already know if you've seen it or if listened to any other Star Wars nerd. I very much like A New Hope as well. I actually don't like Return of the Jedi as much, which is, it's kind of like my Voyager situation. Like, I have a lot of flaws and a lot of reasons why it's lower on my list. It's mostly due to pacing. Is probably the biggest
Okay.
thing, because I don't know why I'm very like sensitive to that issue in movies, and it gets very very slow at the beginning, and then in the middle where it just kind of drags, where it just doesn't have the same flow that the other two movies did. So the prequels, I'm in a weird camp, or maybe not that weird now. I'm getting older, but I was still pretty young. I was like 10 or 11 when Phantom Menace came out. Saw it
Okay.
in theaters, loved it, and then it started to sink in that there was something off, and it took time for me to grow up a little bit more to realize, like, okay, here's why I don't like that movie as much as the other ones. And Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith kind of follow suit. Where
Okay.
I can appreciate them for what they are in terms of being those prequel movies. They have a lot of issues in terms of the writing and the acting. And some of the like more kid-like humor, I guess, didn't land as much, fart jokes and stuff
Right.
as they pop up, which still Star Wars is for kids. Don't begrudge that. But probably the main reason why I do like the prequels, and I'm glad we have them, is it gave us the Clone Wars.
Yes.
The Clone Wars is amazing.
I was just thinking that. I was like, and I think I said it on a different podcast episode, is if we could have gone back, if we could change time, the Clone Wars cartoon series is exactly what we should have gotten in like the first two movies.
That would have been amazing. Because I mean, it's such good storytelling throughout both Clone Wars and then Rebels that followed, where I've been a diehard fan, watching every season as it's released, and I'm going to check out Resistance as well because I like Dave Filoni and company, and they make me very happy to be a fan of Star Wars. So yes, the prequel movies are I'm glad we have them for that reason, as well as simply like they're still good movies. Like they're still fun to watch and sit down, and as a Star Wars nerd, I can pick things out of them and enjoy lightsaber battles and things, even if the writing and performances aren't quite what I wanted. And then for the sequels, I'm unusual in the fact that I really liked Force Awakens. And I think the bulk of that comes from that feeling I had sitting in the theater. It brought me back to like my childhood, like seeing these movies for the first time. Because that's the one out of the new movies where the second it was over, I could have sat there and watched it all over again. Where I really like the new characters. I like Rey. I like Finn. I like Kylo Ren a great deal. I liked him then, even before all the growing up he did in Last Jedi. And it is a rehash of A New Hope. It has a lot of issues in that regard. It's almost the reverse of the prequel situation in some way, where the plot is wholly unoriginal and has a lot of issues, but then the character work and the performances and things of that nature are really good. And so I like it. And Last Jedi, I really need to watch again. I've seen it twice in theaters, and my opinion's kind of muddied at this point. Where I really like the fact it was a bold piece of storytelling. I like that they took risks. I like that they changed the meaning of Star Wars. And as a like storyteller and writer, I really, really like it for that reason. I like the fact that you have to think about it, and that if you blink, you're gonna miss something. The movie has, they all have flaws, well, one way or the other. That's that's just the truth of it. Like the whole Canto bite scene and things of that nature. But yeah, I guess I'm in the camp where I'm not in either extreme. I'm not like defending it with my dying breath, nor am I tearing it apart. I enjoyed it. I saw it twice in theaters after all. I will still, end up rewatching it again. It's on Netflix. I have no excuse. I should just need to make the time for it, and still like the storytelling it did. And then the other two, our Star Wars stories, Rogue One and Solo. Rogue One I enjoyed. Rogue One, I did not get that feeling of I need to rewatch this the second it was over. It's a really, really good war movie. I like a lot of the characters in there, except for Jin. I don't like Jin. Jin is a card.
Oh, wait. I have to say, my what was, I totally misheard, and I thought you said a different character, and I was like, oh, never mind. You can go on. I'm so sorry.
What character did you think I was talking about?
For some reason, I was thinking Chirrut
No,
Imwe, and I'm like,
I love Chirrut.
No. Okay, we're okay. Like I like Jin, but she's I like the ensemble more.
Yeah, she's a cardboard cutout. And that's my biggest complaint there is we have this, this crew of actually pretty cool male characters as I climb up on my feminist soapbox now. And then we have Jin where she's not the character she was in those first trailers. They took out every bit of rebelliousness and personality from her. And I don't like her. I don't like her at all as a lead. And so that's kind of my big issue on that movie. But it has, without a doubt, the best war in the stars of one of the movies. The whole Battle of Scarif is incredible, visually speaking, and the tactics that are employed. And there's a lot of parts of that movie that are a love letter to like Clone Wars fans and even some of the Legend kids.
Yep.
And then I know a lot of people didn't see it, but I really, really enjoyed Solo. Solo is the perfect Edge of the Empire movie.
That is I have not seen Solo. It was on my list of movies to, see, but I never made it to the theater to see it. And I'm kind of bummed that I didn't. And it's like, dang, like I wanted to see these characters and see, just especially being a Legends reader. And I hate to use that word because I will forever think of it as just extended universe. But just to see like what changes they made, especially to Han Solo and Chewbacca's relationship from what I know it to what they're now putting into like the canon through the movies.
Are you aware of how much of a love letter to the Legends kids that movie is?
No, because I rarely see anything positive about it.
There are so many little nods throughout to those of us who grew up reading those books. And this is where I wish I had the movie like fresh in my mind, but we talk about it in depth in the Tales like review of Solo, where they brought so many things back into canon that we had lost. Even little things like Sabak being a term. That is the actual name of the card game. And it has like paper cards now. And still like otherwise the rules aren't that dissimilar in terms of what's there. I'm blanking now. Now I'm on the spot trying to think of it. I should like open up a list of like the little nods and things. But I know there's like background characters and species we don't see and planets and they actually kept more of Han's background than you might think.
Okay. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. I'm gonna be, the second we're off this interview, I'm going to be like, oh, I remember all of our Solo Legends references. As I try to bring up a list now because I can't remember.
Well, I'll just have to make sure to link to your episode so that way people can listen.
Oh, Terrace Kasi is in it, which
yes.
I love. Okay. The fact we have Corellia. They've referenced, Lando mentions all of the like titles of the like Lando adventure books. He's doing like recording like his memoirs and stuff throughout. Like it really made me happy. I know it's like stupid little things most people aren't gonna maybe care about as much. But as somebody who grew up reading those things, it just made me like squee every time they did something with regards to that. And it was just a fun movie. It delivered exactly what I wanted. It was a heist movie. We had this great ensemble cast. I don't think it needed to be a Han and Chewie movie. I'm not sad that it is though. I think that Donald Glover was a fantastic Lando. Is it Aaron Ulrich?
I believe so. I'm not positive on the pronunciation.
Yeah, see, I can't. I only half remember all these things, and yeah, I'm gonna keep throwing out my proper nouns anyway. And feel free to correct me in the chat. But he was a good Han and portrayed a good like younger Han. Where the character isn't quite as like soured as he is by A New Hope, and they kind of help to go into like explaining why that's the case. Unlike say like Rogue One, they didn't take a lot of time introducing a ton of new aliens. Like they introduced some, but they also actually brought in some other ones like Twi'leks and Rhodians, or we see the Pike Syndicate in live action for the first time. Like, they actually did a good job of kind of connecting it to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy we know.
Okay. Very cool. I know, obviously we have episode 9 coming out. It's not this year, it's next year, I
I
believe.
believe so, because technically this year's Star Wars movie was Solo.
Right. So yeah, next year will be 9. And then as far as other movies, I believe they said that they were pausing. I had heard somebody was getting a trilogy of unrelated, like not
Ryan
episode of.
Johnson, the director of Last Jedi.
Okay, yeah, because I'd heard that someone was getting it, and I couldn't remember who it was. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I like Star Wars movies, and I lived through the time of, hey, these movies were on videotape for a super long time. They re-released them in the theaters in '97, and I got to watch them, and that was really cool. And then all of a sudden, prequels came out, and then we're in a drought again. I'll take any Star Wars movie or TV show that I can get my hands on. So yes, please, I'll take Star Wars movies every year.
Yes. Yeah, part of me is like, oh, I'm not ready for episode 9, but I also know the second I see a trailer, I'm going to be geeking out and ready to go see it in theaters. And that'll probably continue to happen because I really, really like Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's good. Star Wars is good, and everyone's Star Wars experience is different, but we're all together in this, and people don't need to be mean about it, because that I think that's been one of the things that I've really been disappointed in, like this past year, is especially with the Star Wars fandom. It's like, man, I really love Star Wars, but I don't want people to even come close to thinking like that I've got like some crazy bone to pick in my body about people or characters, or you mess with my movie type of thing. Like, get off my lawn. Like that, I don't know what happened as far as like the Star Wars fandom went, but it's like a fractured universe of these people where I don't understand how they can be fans of Star Wars and say the things that they say.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp where every time I see people start to go down that particular rabbit hole, it makes me sad. And I would like to think that it's a vocal, just a very like vocal and loud few who are at least the extreme cases, the ones, trying to get like Kathleen Kennedy to step down, or, going on those rants about ruining their childhood. I know for some people it does matter a great deal. For me, I guess I more come at it from the stance of, what I love is still there. Nobody is well, at least now that George Lucas is gone, nobody's going back and messing with A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back. They are the movies I remember, and those will always be there. And you know what? If they do something in like a sequel movie or something, I don't have to, I don't have to watch it. I don't have to run my RPGs in that era. I can go back to my Legends, wheelhouse if that's what I want to do. And that's okay. But also I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna hate people because they're telling stories, because they are trying something new. Like all of this hate seems to have derived from Last Jedi. And while Last Jedi isn't, up on a pedestal for me, I still enjoyed it, and I really, really do applaud the bold decisions to change up the formula and to tell a different kind of story in Star Wars, when I think up to that point everybody thought, okay, here's the formula. We know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't be mad at people for that. In fact, I think that was an incredibly brave decision, and I do think they made the right decisions, at least when it came to, say, big reveals or character decisions. I think they made the right decisions for those characters and in terms of the story that they are telling.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and it's happened with a few other like different fandoms too, where it's like they ruined my child. You know, it's always the they ruined my childhood thing. It's like they didn't ruin your childhood. It's still there. You can go back and watch it. You don't have to. No one's forcing you to watch insert movie here or TV show here. Like you still have it. It's not gone away. It's not been messed with. You can watch it to your heart's content and ignore whatever else.
Yep.
And it's like that's the thing. Like, and you and I will say, yes, I used to complain about George Lucas and like, oh, George Lucas needs to stop messing with Star Wars or stop doing this or but it was always in like that, oh haha, George Lucas, kind of thing. Like when George Lucas sold Star Wars, I wasn't like cheering and saying, oh my gosh, I'm glad that George Lucas is gone. It's like, why would I ever say something like that? That's kind of mean. But it's like nothing's changed. And the only thing that changed is them saying like, okay, everything that was published isn't going to be like canon, which it took me a while to get over, but I got over it because you know what? You just said it. The books are still there. I can still do whatever I want to do. And my favorite character is still going to be Jaina Solo.
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't gone away. They haven't deleted her out of existence. She's there. She's just chilling out in a different version of Star Wars.
Yeah. And in terms of the, like if you say want to run an RPG in Star Wars, you can still do like what I did when I ran my most recent campaign. I pulled Legends material. I included some weird stuff because I was trying to throw some curveballs at my players, and I was pulling from like old West End games material.
Mhm.
You don't have to be beholden to what came before, or even like I don't know if there is a bounty hunters guild in canon anymore.
I don't know. As far as whatever I've seen on the shows and stuff, I don't think so.
I
But
don't think so either. But I know like for like heroes continuity, because this is something now we're very much enjoying the fact we're starting to cherry pick and develop our own. There is a bounty hunters guild. It's something like we decided early on going into the season, and you can pull what you need to tell the stories you want to tell.
exactly. So Star Wars people, be nice. Everyone loves Star Wars in their own way. You don't have to like The Last Jedi. You don't have to like The Phantom Menace or Jar Jar. Some people might love Jar Jar, but you gotta like respect what people like. Don't be cruel, especially on Twitter, and make me sad because it makes me sad when I see the stuff. I'm like, dang it. Who's got time for this? Nobody's got time for this.
Apparently, some people have time for those.
Who's got time to edit videos ranting about Star Wars? Wouldn't you rather be happy about Star Wars? Like positivity. Let's get that in our universe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So I got to ask, do you have a favorite character in the Star Wars universe? I know there's a lot of great choices out there.
Are we going canon or are we going legends?
I'll take whatever you want to give me
because
I love the legends. So I just said Jaina Solo is my favorite character, followed by canon / expanded universe Wedge Antilles. So
I love Wedge so much.
I love Wedge too, very very much, and I was sad that he wasn't in Force Awakens as far as I could tell, or Last Jedi. But damn it, Wedge is phenomenal in the expanded universe / legends book series. So everyone needs to go read books that have Wedge in it, and definitely Jaina Solo, because she is the pride of the Solo family.
Yes. Oh, you've got me thinking. I'm trying, like my mind's going down all these different paths, trying to remember all these characters I've picked up and loved and moved on from throughout all the books I've read and games I've played, and I love so many of them. So I'm going to give you an answer. It may not be like the one true answer because I'm on the spot right now, and he's probably on my mind because you've been talking up Jaina.
Okay.
I like Anakin Solo a lot. Like what sticks out of my head, the whole like star by star situation. Like the journey that character went on from like little punk, kind of where they're worried, like, oh, is he going to live up to his like family name, to becoming, the leader he was, and the growth he went through after Chewbacca's Legends death. He's still fine in canon, folks. Because in Legends, Chewie sacrificed himself for Anakin, and that like tore him up. Like, his dad lost his best friend, and he felt responsible, and he just has some really, really good books there. And the whole situation, Star by Star, where I can't remember the name of his like girlfriend now, but like that whole situation where it's the you better come back to me thing, and he's so like, he knows he's not going to, but he's kind of like peace with his decision, and like becomes one with the Force as he's like buying time for his team to escape. Like, it's a very like, it's a sad book. It's a bummer ending, but this like 18, 19-year-old kid like, to me, showed like what it meant to be a Jedi during that series. And there were still like ripples off of that character going forward. So that's the character that came to mind since we've been talking about the Legends solo family.
Yeah, that was one of those books where, you obviously have the Chewbacca death in the first book right out the gate.
Yeah.
And you do have, as the books progress, like, you have near misses, and you have like maybe minor characters dying here or there. But that was almost like the turning point for the series of, oh damn, like, yes, the Yuuzhan Vong like will destroy entire planets and ecosystems, but Anakin Solo, like, that kind of turned characters down even like darker paths, and just changed like obviously like the whole family dynamic, all sorts of things just based on that character.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't think the rest of the Legends continuity we had would have been the same had he lived through Star by Star.
Oh no, yeah, it'd be totally different.
And now he's got me thinking about all these other Legends characters, because all my favorites are the not connected to, or like a lot of my favorites are like the not connected to the like primary family characters, where it's like, okay, they just had their one book or their trilogy or whatever. Like, I love a lot of the books that like dove further into a particular planet or environment, like the Darth Maul Shadow Hunter, and then I'm trying to remember what they're called. It might be like Twilight of the Jedi or something. It's like it's dealing with like a like Jedi who went aground post Order 66 on Coruscant. But both that trilogy and the Darth Maul Shadow Hunter just deal with Coruscant. Like, that was a big reason why like Nema in season 1 of Heroes was from Coruscant, because like I loved how they expanded on that world, and just those handful of books.
Yeah, Coruscant is almost a character unto itself, especially in the books.
Yes.
Where you get to dive into like the layers upon layers upon layers of what Coruscant is, and it's so fascinating to read. And just obviously in the movies they show you, it's like, oh yeah, it's like one giant city on this planet, but just going deep into like the stratification and everything that's going on there is incredible.
It almost becomes a different genre. Like, it's almost this like cyberpunk kind of take, like mashed with like Star Wars, when you start going deeper into it, and you're dealing with the different levels and different sort of I'm blanking on like the term right now, but like, like your different social groups throughout it. Especially the deeper you go, it's almost like it almost turns into like you're going into a dungeon where there's just like horrid creatures and people who have been forgotten down there so long that they forgot what it means to be like a sentient being and things like that. It's so creepy.
Yeah, everyone needs to check out books that have Coruscant on, like, especially like the books that really focus on there, because it's totally different than what you would expect a Star Wars book to be about.
Yes.
All right, so we got like two major fandoms. We've talked about them. We did Star Trek and we did Star Wars, but there's one that I've heard about, and I've been really interested in it, but I know nothing, and you love it, so I'd like for you to tell me why I should love it and why I should invest my non-existent time in it. Um, and that is a video game series. I believe it's a Valkyria Chronicles.
Correct.
Yes, I got it right.
Good job. So Valkyria Chronicles is an unusual like tactics game that Sega put out back I guess the first game was about a decade ago. I know I was in college when it came out. I had no interest in it when it first came out, and then some of my like college friends picked it up and got into it, and so I picked it up and I was hooked. Valkyria Chronicles does a couple of things that are really like unique. Like it takes place in this kind of like anime version of like World War II, but a lot of the like different factions or things going on are changed. Like the first game is dealing with so the first game deals with Gallia, which is kind of this like Switzerland like country, like it's neutral in this larger war between the Empire and the Alliance, which are these two big superpowers that are sort of battling across the continent of Europa. So again, not a lot like World War II, but different. And they incorporate some sort of more fantastical elements. Like there is this ore that can be used to like power weapons or tanks or things like that instead of using like gasoline. And some of the different like factions and groups are changed. Like you have the Darksons that are kind of sort of they're like Jewish insert. They're like dark skinned, dark eyed people that are thought to be responsible for this like sundering of the world. And there are the Valkyrias, or the Valkyries, which are people who possess the bloodline of what might have been an advanced alien species or something, where if they interact with certain artifacts left by the Valkyries, they develop superpowers and are basically capable of like stomping an entire army on their own.
Wow. That's crazy.
But the bulk of the series is dealing with the soldiers who are sort of wrapped up in these conflicts. So the first game is all dealing with the militia, so the people who are drafted to fight against the invading empire, to defend their homeland. And so in terms of gameplay, you have like an overhead map view, and you have command points that can be spent to do things like give orders to like give stat boosts to your units, or you can click on a unit and then you actually go into almost like a real-time control of them, where you can move them around, but you have a set amount of movement, your action points, and you can take one attack or to commit one other action, like repairing a tank or building a fortification or something with that unit. And so it kind of combines this sort of like it's not first person, but like third person shooter sort of feel with the like the tactics, which gives it a really interesting feel as far as games go. And then it has that anime art style that is then actually depicted as like watercolors. So it has this really beautiful look that the first game, even as old as it is, holds up today because it is like an art piece. And it sort of incorporates these battles with this sort of ongoing like visual novel like narrative, as the characters are interacting with each other and different things go on. They build camaraderie, and they suffer losses, and different things occur. So there have been 3 games in the series. The first one is widely available in like PS3, PS4, and I think PC now. The second game was only available on the PlayStation Portable, the PSP, back in the day.
Way back in the day.
Way back in the day, which takes place at the like Gallia Academy post-war. It is not as good of a game, but I bought a PSP to play that game. I like this franchise so much, and still put like 100 hours into it, so can't be that bad. But that's dealing with a lot of like political ramifications of events that happen in the first game, and kind of falls a bit more into sort of like anime high school tropes. But the gameplay is still really solid, and they introduce different units and tanks and things of that nature. Valkyria Chronicles 3 never came out in the US.
What?
It was Japanese only, Japan only. Followed a group of like prisoners who got drafted into the Gallia militia back during the war and were forced to fight. And was like the kind of like the dark and edgy version of that series that was apparently like really well received. Not that we got it. So why this was on my mind and why I'm really excited is on September 25th. So since this comes out in October, will have already passed. Valkyria Chronicles 4 comes out, and it is the first Valkyria Chronicles game to not only come out in the US, it's already been out in Japan for about a year, but it's going to come out for like the likes of PS4 and I think PC.
Okay.
And that's going to go back to the Second European War and detail the Alliance perspective. So we're actually going to leave Gallia and see a lot more of that world than that we just haven't touched on in the other games.
Yeah, I just checked my Steam wish list, and I was like, because I knew I had one of them in my wish list, and it's like, oh, it's Valkyria Chronicles, the first one. I've had in my wish list forever because I've heard so many good things about it, and I was like, I like tactic games, and I like games that people say are really good, but I've never purchased it.
I recommend it. It's also, especially as somebody who has limited time, it's a great game to pick up and watch a little bit of the narrative, because it's told all throughout like as a like textbook almost on the topic of the war. And so every like given scene is either a like 1 minute long cutscene, or it's like a interaction between two characters. So they actually go by pretty quickly, and then you can like save mid battle. So even if you don't have time to do a full like scenario, it's pretty easy to like get partway in and pause for the time being. Like I found it to be a really good game to like pick up and just play for a little bit.
And that's always a good thing. That's one of the things where, and I've mentioned it before, where like I've got the PlayStation 4 and I love like my Final Fantasy games. So I have Final Fantasy 10, and I started it up and I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like watching the cutscenes, getting into the game. And then one of the kids is like, hey, when are you going to get off the TV? I want to watch something. I'm like, okay, let me just get to a save point. And I quickly remember, like, yeah, there's not like a save point for like 2 hours probably. And I'm like, yeah, this might not be the game for me to play when you guys are awake.
Yeah, this would be a fairly decent one, because even though it deals with like war, it is like an anime kind of like lighter game in a lot of ways. Like it's not bloody. There's I don't think there's any profanity in there beyond like damn or hell.
Right.
I mean, there's also adorable things like a little pig with wings, and goofy anime stuff that pops up. But it's until they get into some of the like deeper war stuff, it's not really. I guess it's like fairly like everybody friendly. Besides that aspect, and again, that's not bloody.
Yeah. It's the same thing with like when I play XCOM on the computer. I'm like, okay, well, this mission turned out, I thought it was going to be an easy mission and, take 20 minutes. And 2 hours later, I'm still on the same mission trying to eliminate all my alien enemies and, taking the time. And it's like, okay, I'd really like to go to bed now, but I got to finish this.
This is much easier than XCOM. XCOM punishes you and you lose people left and right. This game, you can still like permanently lose characters. There's permadeath on your different cast as things can occur, but you usually have to really mess up or be in a bad tactical situation for it to happen. It's not like even say Fire Emblem where somebody goes down and they're just immediately dead. It's, you have a chance to like get a medic in there and stabilize them and like evac them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot easier and lighter, and I like that about it. At least for the main story missions, it actually gets surprisingly harder if you're trying to like 100% it, because they have like skirmish scenarios that can be replayed, and the higher difficulties of that, it gets absolutely ridiculous. To the point, I know like past Kristine back on the PS3, when there were no trophies, mastered these things, was very proud of herself, and present day Kristine can't do it again on the PS4 with the trophies to save her life.
Huh?
So I will not be getting a platinum in that game as much as I would like it.
Oh my goodness. It's hard to believe that we used to live in a world where it's like your trophies were accomplishing winning the game and finding stuff and not being recognized for it. And now it's like, oh look, there's trophies for doing all sorts of stuff that I had no clue was like trophy worthy. But sure, I'll take the trophy.
Yeah, I have a problem of I like the platinum games. I like to have that 100%. And I've just recently platinumed a couple different games that I've been working on for a while, where certain games I just go, you know what? I'm gonna master this. I want to have that on my profile to say that. Which I guess is a good way to keeps me from spending money on more games.
Yeah.
Makes
yeah.
me spend more time with what I have.
Exactly. You got to get that replayability factor in somehow.
Yeah, although I will be picking up Valkyria Chronicles 4 probably at launch. I've already warned Nicole when it comes out. She's going to lose me for at least a couple of days.
Right. Exactly. And if I ever get to check out Valkyria Chronicles, I'll have to let you know and be like, "Hey, look, I'm playing. I'll tell you all about
Yay.
like my losses because I'm not tactical anymore."
Oh. Oh. I was also going to say that there's also an anime for it, actually.
What? Oh, I'll have to find that then.
Yeah, that came out back in the day. It's even like cutesier and more like kid friendly than the game is, but it's still, I like it.
Awesome. Now, as we've been discussing, obviously throughout this entire episode of like tabletop games and especially Star Wars, you are a part of a podcast, and it's a Star Wars podcast. And if people didn't listen to your episode during Women in Tabletop Gaming Month, what's the podcast? What could people expect? Why should people listen?
So the podcast I am a player and the player on and the editor for is Heroes of the Hydian Way. Heroes is a Star Wars actual play podcast that uses the Fantasy Flight Games narrative dice system. So we're playing the actual like RPG, and we do include mechanics in our game and things of that nature, but overall we're telling stories as a set of characters, and having a lot of fun as we do it. So we actually just recently started our second season. Our first season was all Age of Rebellion focused. Our second one is Edge of the Empires, which meaning we're in this case we're a group of bounty hunters. So kind of the like Boba Fett, except for we're not cool like Boba Fett. We're the other guys. Riding around in a ship called the Sky on Fire, and we are kind of our own little quirky family of droids and alien species that are taking on different hunts and trying to earn a credit out on the Outer Rim. And by this point, the first few episodes of the season will be out, and as I think they will demonstrate, this is a crew that is kind of out there. I love them so much. Like we've had some bad dice rolls, like just some bad luck in general, but it's added so much to the inherent comedy of the situations we find ourselves in. Because I kind of pride ourselves on, compared to some of the, I guess, other actual plays that are out there, we kind of hit a sweet spot between we are goofy, we are having fun, but we're also are still telling a narrative, and we do have our dramatic moments. We kind of are in the middle between the two, which I personally like a lot, both at like my table as as somebody who enjoys role playing games, as well as somebody who enjoys podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also get to hear me portray a Gand, which is an insectoid species that names are very prominent in their culture. So I refer to I have to speak in the third person in character a lot, which is very challenging, avoiding all pronouns for all people. And there isn't a thing I can say in that voice that doesn't sound funny.
So, for people that maybe are listening for the first time, the season 1 and season 2, are they connected as far as like characters, or is this a whole new crew?
Whole new crew. There is no direct connection between the two. We haven't even had a cameo or anything like that, which will probably be in there, but you don't need to have watched the first season at all to enjoy the second season. You can jump straight in. And besides a couple of like little off references, those of us from the first season might make, you know, there's no tie to what came before. We actually have 2 new cast members this season, Brandon and David Pickering, who most people might know from Tales from the Hydian Way. He was a co-host there for a while before we snatched him up for the hero side for at least this season.
Awesome. How did you go about creating, as far as like you whoever the storyteller is going to, you chose Edge of the Empire versus Age of Rebellion. How once you got that, like, how was the process of creating the characters and figuring out how you were going to all work together?
A lot of that you can actually hear during our Session 0 episodes. We have a 2-parter Session 0 that is us laying out kind of what we're thinking about playing and actually forging some of those connections right there on the air. We did talk a bit beforehand. It was actually very cute. David, who is super excited to play, had a character idea and was building upon he plays a Twi'lek gambler named Vurin Afa. He had been building him up for about a month while Ben, who's the game master, Leslie, and I, who are the 2 returning players from season 1, were all wrapping up season 1. So Vurin was our first character, and then the rest of us started to kind of play around and figure out sort of what else do we want to throw in there? Like, if we had this social character, what do we need? And after quite a bit of shuffling, we ended up with Leslie plays a droid enforcer named Billy, who was a former like B2 battle droid from like the Clone Wars, who got repurposed to be a sabacc dealing droid for a like an underground like card game, and was quite capable of dealing with cheaters should they arise. And she was won by Vurin, and is technically his droid, although he's really not comfortable owning one since he is a former slave. Then Brandon plays a Solonian captain named Barrowen. Solonians are kind of like giant otter people from the Corellian system. So we're going back into our Legends material here. But they tend to be a more like xenophobic species. So Barrowen's a little notable for having left her homeworld. And then I play Cav, the previously mentioned Gand, who's a droid tech. So while I have yet to have built any droids, I just have the one I started the game with. I intend to start building a not an army, I guess a small squad of droids to aid us in our bounty hunting endeavors, namely information gathering is what I figure.
Awesome. It's one of the things that I enjoy, especially with the advent of like actual play podcasts, is hearing that episode 0 type, just to hear like everyone's way of creating characters and just figuring out how their character is going to interact with others. Because when we used to play back in the like late 90s or whatever for D&D, is like always like, okay, who's going to be the healer, who's going to be like the fighter, or the wizard or sorcerer or whatever, magic user. And that's how it would go. Is like, okay, well, whatever, whoever's comfortable with whatever. And on the flip side, like with vampire, it was always like, well, I just want to play this character and I'll figure out the clan and go from there. But recently, like, it's been that way of, well, let's talk together and come up with some kind of game plan beforehand before we even get to the table. And I love just getting to listen to those kind of episodes where it's like, I like to listen to see how other people make their characters and just see how they kind of like roll with what they're either dealt with or given, or what the dice say, or how they, and as you had mentioned earlier, like just seeing how their character progresses in, maybe if the games have that aspect of going through the motions of family and growing up, and what did you do and how did you handle this, and just getting to hear that kind of stuff. It's really one of those like fun listens for me.
Yes. Something else I like a lot about session zeros is you'll get to hear a character concept from the start, but then also you'll get to hear how does that character change almost immediately as you start playing. Like we had a couple of big changes character wise as soon as we got started. Like so like a couple examples, like Cav. I had set up, and Gand are normally very humble beings, given the whole name situation and everything else. And I thought of like Cav as this kind of like gentle little Gand entering the galaxy. Sure, Cav had done one bad thing in Cav's past, and and we're good. And then 5 seconds into recording the first episode, Cav extorts somebody for money. It happens immediately, and I'm like, okay, this character is shadier than I was thinking. That was not an isolated incident. And then also very quickly, somewhere along the way, Cav has become a very arrogant Gand. Where just certain things come up and Cav will lie or embellish or things. And I'm like, okay, this is not what I was expecting, not what I talked about in session 0, but it works for the character and I'm understanding and we're going with it. And likewise, things like Leslie playing Billy. Billy's become way more like sagely and zen than anybody expected. She's just very like, she's our anchor. Like she's turned into like a much more like sagely zen character than any of us were expecting. And so I love hearing that on podcasts where those expectations change as they get going, as well as just seeing like people figure out those different relationships on the spot. Or if you're a fan of like just people nerding out about something, like our part 2 of our session 0, we talk about like starships, like Star Wars ships, for like 20 minutes, where it's just like, because 4 of us just know enough about Legends, we just start going down this rabbit hole and we can't stop ourselves.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially when you have that character concept, you put it down on paper and you haven't really done anything with it. But there's something about when you get to the table and all of a sudden you're in the situation interacting and you find that voice and you find the character and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't make you be like that at all. However, I really like where you're going.
Yep. As well as like playing off of the other players. Like something that gets thrown up. I'm just spoiling some things from our first episode, but at one point there's Leslie and David are making a gag on the side about coupons. And I just like chime in about how like Cav has a bunch of coupons. It's now become a set part of that character that Cav bargain hunts and collects things, and just people will play off of each other and different relationships will get established, and I like that a lot.
Awesome. And yeah, that's definitely something where it's like, it's one of those things where if I had more time, not only like more time for like doing things that I love, but I've got like this backlog of podcasts, and it's because, there's so many good ones out there. So I try to follow the ones that I'm able to, and just seeing the character development from like the first episode to the 20th episode, for example, it's so incredible, like the stories that characters go through. And I wish like podcasting had been around like way back in the day when I was playing, because I'd love to listen to like the stories that we did. But at the same time, I just love getting to listen to what's going on now, like these totally different characters than I'd ever expect to hear about, and what they're going on in their journeys, and just it's so incredible.
Yes. I like doing this a lot. Like I'm sure that that might be obvious having already done it a year and a half, but it's a lot of fun to get to share that with people, to get to capture a table experience. And it is a little bit different from just like playing for your own benefit. Less side chatter, a little bit more focus, but I like doing it a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely something where it's like it's definitely fun to do it. Although I will say that editing those things, just bane of my existence sometimes, when especially if the audio is off by even like 2 seconds. It's like, no, the amount of work that I have to do to fix that.
That's my experience every single Heroes episode, because we have this is the problem of we're a rare podcast that has 4 players and a game master. Always one person is out of sync. Never fails. And it is a lot of work, but it's worth doing. I'm really proud of the like final products we're putting out. And like I've heard a lot of people talk about how helpful it is to like hear a game being played as like a means to learn mechanics for something. As well as something unusual that we do is we actually run the Fantasy Flight Games modules.
Oh, okay.
So season 1 we did Dead in the Water from the Age of Rebellion GM kit, and then we did Friends Like These, one of the big modules. And this season we're doing Trouble Brewing from the Edge of the Empire core book for our first adventure, and then we're going to do Mask of the Pirate Queen, another one of the big like pure adventure books. And we also like, some of the reason we're putting this together is to also serve as like an illustration of how you can make a module your own, because the only one who reads them is Ben, is the game master. The rest of us have no clue. We are interacting with things just as they come up, completely oblivious. We are the chaotic, we are the chaos, the players thrown into a situation where we're going to latch onto one thing that's not the main plot, and then Ben has to somehow like get us back on track or find a way to turn that into the plot. I can't think of a lot of other podcasts that do that. The main example that comes to my mind is like Dice Camera Action from like Wizards of the Coast with like Chris Perkins, where they actually are running the D&D modules. I think that can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, it's especially like, I talked about it, like D&D is obviously the big dog as far as like what most people know with tabletop role playing, and then you get some of the stuff like White Wolf and Star Wars with Fantasy Flight Games now, and you get a lot of like systems where people aren't familiar with it. And I know it's super incredibly helpful, especially with systems that I've not heard of, to hear like the process of, okay, here's the dice rolls, or here's how this is handled. Like one of them, and I want to just shout them out, is like the Magpies that does the Blades in the Dark.
Yes.
And
I just started
like,
listening to them.
Yeah, I'd number one, I'd never heard of the system at all, like to begin with, and listening to their first episode was not only incredibly awesome because of the storytelling. I went and bought the book the next day on Amazon because I really like the systems that are put in place with like the clock system and counting down like things, and the devil's bargain. And it's like, oh damn, like that's stuff I'd like to incorporate into like a game, just to even have it as something where I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm going to set a clock and I'll, tick boxes off, even if it's unrelated to the system. I like having something like that. Like, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, especially people running modules, and I think I see a lot more of it, not on the podcasting side, but like on the Twitch streaming side. I see a lot of people doing a lot of the modules, or the Tomb of Annihilation or Strahd, that they're
Yes.
playing through that. But on the podcast side, I see more of like the homebrew, like, let's make something and then we'll incorporate like maybe bits and pieces, but not actually module play. And that's really cool to be able to hear something like what you all are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's definitely something. And I think it is a help for people to listen, especially if I'm staring at the module. I'm like, well, how am I going to run this? Well, let me listen to see how they handled this, or they handled this particular situation or encounter. How did they get them back on track?
Yeah, may not be at all how it goes. Like, there's a whole section of Friends Like These that's not in the book, because we went so off the beaten path. Ben had like a paragraph to work with. It's like all the mention in there, and had to craft an entire thing. And then there's a whole section in that book we don't use as a result of that.
Wow.
And it's okay. Like, we told our story, and I think it turned out really well. And I think it still achieved the right feel that the module was going for. It's just that we made a decision that the module didn't have all the answers for. And that's okay. That's part of running a module. You got to make it your own. Or other things like in Dead in the Water, there's no information on the like main antagonist, a tactical droid named TJ. Ben gave life to that character, and to this day we still we love that character, because he was just a lot of fun taunting us as things went on, and was a voice. Not so much a face, but a voice is more important for a podcast anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout that entire adventure, you got to make it your own.
Exactly. And that is what I hope everyone is doing on their podcasts. And obviously for you all, you get to do that on yours and make it your own with your characters.
Yes.
So for people that have listened to this episode, where can they find you on the internet for anything?
So you can find me on Twitter at 12th Night. That's 12th Night with a K. If you want to check out Heroes of the Hydian Way or Tales from the Hydian Way, both of which have been mentioned, you can find them over at thehydianway.com. And if you're on the fence, I recommend just poking your head over there and take a look at our album art for this season. If that doesn't convince you to give us a try, I don't know what will. The Hydian Way can be found on Twitter at the Hydian Way. In addition to my Star Wars related stuff, I've also been a guest on the Broadswords podcast. That's a D&D 5th edition actual play podcast, where I played a couple of characters, Lady Yelbruna and then Colwyn. We had a couple episodes featuring me as Colwyn release back in early September. And there may be a little bit more on the horizon.
Awesome.
I also, by this point, can probably be, I can also be found on the Little Busters Tales from the Loop Twitch stream that's run by Nomadic and that can be found over at twitch.tv/Nomadic, where I'm very much looking forward to diving deeper into that. I also did a whole bunch of International Podcast Month episodes that are available, including another Tales from the Loop run by Nomadic. That's what convinced me to try the Little Busters. And you can find out more about that over at internationalpodcastmonth.com. And yeah, if you follow me on Twitter, there's another thing or two that might have popped up by this point. I will give a spoiler and say both are Dungeons and Dragons related.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to have the links to all the episodes and the links to not only like the Hydian Way, but also to like the Broadswords and Little Buster's Nomadics channel.
Yep.
On
And
the show
Valkyria
notes.
Chronicles.
And Valkyria Chronicles. and everything that I need to have out there for everybody to take a listen to, especially like your Star Wars recap episodes, so that way people can check those out.
Yes.
And Kristine, I just want to say thank you, not only, you know, for coming back one time, but for at least recording the first time, but for coming back and spending this time with me for this episode, because it's really awesome. And I do have to say, like, it's so wonderful to not only talk to you, but to interact with you and talk to you on Twitter, especially, I guess only on Twitter, but yeah, on Twitter, because, you know, that's where we discuss and talk about things. And I love seeing what's going on. And I love like everything that's, you know, it's just everything. It seems like in the past year, just growing and changing, and cool things are happening to people. It's like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been Twitter. I can be found talking about all sorts of random things, usually nerdy. And it has been incredible, the amount of growth and the conversations that happen there. There's such a good like RPG / podcasting community on there.
Yes, there is. And if you follow Kristine, you'll eventually go down that rabbit hole of just really incredible podcasts and tabletop gaming related stuff, and you won't regret clicking on that follow button.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on Tales from the Fandom again, David. This has been an absolute blast, and I still feel like we could have taken any one of these topics and done a whole episode on them.
It may happen in the future, because, you know, I like to pull from the past guest category to, you know, to do like big focus episodes. So it's always something I'm always on the lookout for. I'm like, okay, I want to do a full episode about insert thing here. Who can I pull from? And it's always something that I'm always, you know, trying to remember and be like, who was into that? Let me see if they're available.
Mm-hmm.
But it's absolutely a pleasure for this. And, you know, I will obviously see you around on the Twitterverse.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.